So as you can see, I've removed the housing of the final drive. What you're going to want to do is undo these bolts right here. They're a 15/16 socket. They're going to sit on the back side, and you're just going to undo them. I like the clock and the housing. You can see I have paint marks in here. Let's see. You can see I have some paint marks marking some of the holes to keep it aligned when I put it back in. So you're going to want to do those as you get it undone. From this point, sometimes it might be kind of a challenge to get the housing out where it might be seized and rusted in here. You can see the rust. So if you have a Porter Power and a pancake jack or something, you can set in here and push it apart, or you can take a hammer and smack on the flange and kind of loosen it up and it will come off. Make sure you have a crane hooked to it or something to keep it so it doesn't fall down on the ground or fall on top of you. So after I've got it removed, I brought it into the shop and I'll show you what we got. So here's the housing split in half. I've already split it in half. This part right here is what you're going to see, this gear looking thing here. This has pilot holes that sits down on here. This housing has been flipped upside down, so imagine this housing right here was set like this on this housing. This is where the hydraulic motor comes in through. This right here is the back side of the flange where the sprocket faces, and again, this is how it sets. I have it split apart to inspect the dual cone sill, which I found is blown. So this gear right here goes down through there. There's pilot holes, and you're going to have some bolts. You're going to have a bunch of bolts sitting inside that ring gear, and that's what holds everything together, are these bolts, and it holds that whole, the two halves. So in order to change your dual cone sill or to inspect it, your ramps, you're going to want to undo that. I did it here on the ground. I undid them, and I used my crane. You can see here, and I lifted it off square from this, and this just sat there. Go get a aluminum bar, 1 inch in diameter, and use that as a punch, because that aluminum will not damage this steel. It's a soft material. You can sit there and work this back and forth, and this will fall out of this housing. Again, this part is inside this housing this way, and as it comes apart, make sure you keep you'll see these space washers as well. This will be the first thing you tear off. These have little shims and washers, or spacer shims in there, and that's to set a preload when these bearings are new in here. So go ahead and inspect your bearings in here for play. You have 2 sets of bearings in here. You have a front and a back bearing. That's what all your machine weight rests on, and your track, and that's the whole drive bearings. So inspect those, and if you're just doing the dual cone sill, because this is leaking, this is the housing, this is the bottom, and you'd see oil coming out of, and you're going to put those bearings look fine, and you can reuse them. Keep these shims, because you can just put them right in, and you don't have to set a preload on any of those new bearings if they're good. So those bearings look pretty good. I might just reuse those. I'm going to look through them and clean them up and see how much play is in them. These right here is your dual cone sills. There's 4 pieces, okay? So you have a big giant O-ring, and then you have a steel race, giant O-ring and a steel race. So I'll show you how they sit in here. So that O-ring sits down in there, and then this race goes over the O-ring, and they're pressed down in that, like this. And imagine that O-ring being set in this race being on top. So they're not hard to get out. You just take a little crowbar, you can see just my hand tools, and you just pry this right up and it comes right out. Well, the reason why we're leaking is this race right here, you see, is gone bad. You can see that race has come apart. And what you want to expect, so that's those 4 pieces make up a dual cone sill. And so that race, what you want to inspect are called ramps. And these are your ramps. It's just your outside housing of where that O-ring and that race rest. And so the O-ring goes in here, and then the race mounts down onto this. And so what I'm expecting is any kind of scratches or scarring along this outside edge right here of your housing. If you have a scar, if you have metal go through there, you will need to get this turned or machined. They need to weld it, bring it back up, and then turn the inside of this to bring it back to spec, or it'll just keep leaking. So if you go ahead and you get new ones in there, you can use blocks of wood to get it set. The new ones will have a flange on this race right here as you roll this O-ring back down on here. There's several different ways you can use it. If you have a press, you could probably, if you're careful, you can lay it underneath a press with some 2x4s on here and just kind of push it down. You don't need a press, or you can do it with hammers and just kind of apply pressure and let that O-ring roll down and seat. So what you're going to want to do when you install this is use oil. Use 80-90 gear oil, or you can use just some sort of a heavy-duty hydraulic oil, 46 weight oil, or even grease. You could use grease, but again, I would probably stick with just oil at this point so you don't hinder the strength of this O-ring. And so what you're going to want to do is you want this race, imagine this getting pushed down in here and sitting flush. So if I remove that O-ring, I'll show you. You want that race to sit down flush and flat against that ramp, is what they call it. And that right there makes up your duocone sill. And that's how it'll sit. You see that there's some space in there. That's because there should be an O-ring in there that's centering all that. And that is what seals it, is that these two surfaces right here and that O-ring hold everything together. That surface, those surfaces are a wear item that rub against each other, and those two O-rings seal down in here on that housing, and together combined they make a good seal. And so they're not too hard to change other at this point, now that you have a final drive completely torn apart. So if you follow this movie back through the steps on the rebuild process of this, I might make a video on how to put all this stuff back in. It's pretty simple. It's the same way that it came out through these videos. So tell me what you think, some things I can improve on. Tell me what, if you have any past experiences in this, let me know in the comment section. Please like and subscribe on my videos. Thank you for following. If you have any questions as well, be sure to put them in the comments. I can try to answer them the best of my knowledge, and I will if I do know that the answers to some of those questions. So again, thank you for watching.